The gasp moved through the ballroom like a single wave, and it had nothing to do with the woman on the floor. Amanda heard the crack before anyone else did, the sound of Katie Eckert's head hitting marble. She was already moving before the screaming started, pushing through the frozen crowd, dropping to her knees, tilting Katie's chin back with hands that still remembered exactly what to do. She worked fast, quiet, certain, and then 400 people watched a woman they had never once looked at, a driver, an immigrant, someone paid to wait outside, press her mouth to the most powerful heiress in the city. The gasps came next, then the shouting, then the hands grabbing Amanda's arms, pulling her back, dragging her away from the one thing in that room that actually mattered. Nobody asked if she knew what she was doing. Nobody asked why she moved when everyone else stood still. They only saw what it looked like and decided that was enough. 4 seconds passed. Then Katie stopped breathing. By morning, a 4-second video had 60,000 views. By afternoon, Amanda had no job, no income, and a legal case building against her like a wall she couldn't see over. Her teenage daughter had seen the clip, her visa status had been flagged, and the woman whose life she saved hadn't said a single word publicly, not yet. But Amanda had a secret that nobody in that ballroom knew, a secret she had spent 3 years burying just to survive, and it was about to change everything. Amanda knew the exact moment Mr. Eckert's mood shifted, 3 seconds before he said anything. His left hand would move to his collar, a small adjustment, barely visible. But she had been watching that collar for 3 years and she never missed it. That was the job, not just driving, watching, anticipating, being ready before anyone thought to ask. She knew that Katie took her blood pressure medication with sparkling water, never still, because still water made her feel like she was swallowing something wrong, and a woman who felt wrong before a meeting performed differently at it. She knew that Duran always needed the air conditioning 2 degrees cooler than he admitted. She knew that Bowling ate a protein bar at exactly 11:15 every morning and got irritable if anything interrupted it. She knew the length of every driveway, the timing of every gate, the name of every security guard at every building the Eckerts visited. None of them knew her last name. In 3 years, Mr. Eckert had not once looked directly at her. Not in the mirror, not when he climbed in or out. She was part of the car, functional, reliable, beneath consideration. She had stopped finding that painful a long time ago. Pain required surprise, and she had used up all her surprise in the first year. She drove, she waited, she went home. Home was a 2-bedroom apartment on the 4th floor of a building where the elevator worked 3 days out of 5. It was clean. It was hers, or close enough to hers that the distinction no longer felt worth making. The kitchen table was small enough that Mindy's scholarship applications covered it completely, edge to edge, color-coded with sticky tabs in 3 different colors. Mindy was 17 and organized in a way that made Amanda quietly proud and quietly terrified in equal measure. Proud because Mindy had built that system herself. Terrified because that kind of careful planning in a 17-year-old meant she had already learned that nothing came without a fight. On the wall above the small bookshelf, there was a frame. Inside the frame was a certificate. The words on it were in Romanian, and the seal at the bottom was from the University of Medicine and Pharmacy in Cluj-Napoca, and the name on it was Amanda's. Her full name, the one nobody here ever used, followed by a title that the United States government did not recognize, because the equivalency exam had a wait list, and the wait list had a fee, and the fee had been impossible at the exact moment it needed to be possible. She had turned the frame toward the wall 18 months ago. She told herself it was because the light hit the glass wrong. Under the passenger seat of the town car, tucked behind a bottle of water and a folded umbrella, there was a cardiology textbook, spine cracked at chapter 11, margins full of notes in her own handwriting. Small, precise, the kind of handwriting that came from years of charting under time pressure. Mindy had found it once during a car wash. She held it up in that particular way teenagers hold things, like evidence. "Mom, why do you have this?" Amanda had taken it back without breaking stride. "Old habit." Mindy had looked at her for a moment too long, the way she sometimes did, like she was trying to read a sentence in a language she almost understood. Then she let it go. Mindy let a lot of things go. Amanda noticed that too. The night of the Eckert Foundation gala, Amanda parked in the service lot at 6:47 and cut the engine. The event wasn't her responsibility past drop-off. Bowling had his own team inside. But the pickup was scheduled for 11, and she stayed close out of habit. She had a book. She had the textbook, actually, because Chapter 11 had been bothering her all week. She didn't read it. Through the tall glass doors at the rear of the venue, she could see the edge of the ballroom. The clean geometry of tables, the drift of guests in dark formal wear, the particular slow movement of people who had nowhere more important to be. Staff circulated with trays. Someone was at a podium. Light bounced off crystal and silverware and the kind of jewelry that costs more than some buildings. Amanda watched without thinking much about it. 3 years of waiting outside rooms like this had made the sight feel ordinary in the way that only repetition can achieve. Then she saw Katie. She was standing near the far side of the room, half behind a pillar, holding a champagne glass she wasn't drinking from. Her father was at the podium 30 feet away, and she was facing him with the correct expression. Present, supportive, composed. But her right hand was at her temple, 2 fingers, pressing lightly. Amanda went still. Then Katie lowered her hand, smiled at something someone said, shifted her weight, everything normal. Then her fingers went back up, same 2, same spot, same quiet, almost unconscious pressure. Amanda's hand found the door handle before she had finished the thought that sent it there, because she had seen that gesture before, not at a gala, and not on someone in a ball gown, but in a hospital corridor on a Tuesday morning on a patient who pressed 2 fingers to her left temple and told Amanda she just had a small headache. That patient had not made it to the end of Amanda's shift. She was out of the car before the door handle finished moving, not running. Running drew the wrong attention, slowed people down with questions. She walked the way she used to walk through hospital corridors at 2 in the morning, fast, purposeful, with the particular confidence of someone who knows exactly where they are going and exactly why. The service entrance was 30 feet from the parking lot. She had counted it the first week on the job. Old habit. The door was propped open with a rubber wedge for the catering staff. She was through it in 4 steps, inside. But the noise of the ballroom hit her immediately. Conversation, silverware, the low, warm hum of a room full of people who felt safe. She moved along the edge of the corridor, past stacked linen carts and a catering station, toward the main floor. A server looked up. She didn't stop. Nobody stops a person who doesn't stop. She heard it before she saw it. Not a crash, not a scream. A single sharp sound. The particular density of a human body meeting hard marble, followed immediately by a different kind of silence. The silence that falls when 400 people stop talking at exactly the same moment. Amanda was already through the doorway. The crowd had pulled back instinctively, opening a rough circle around the space where Katie had been standing. Some people had their hands over their mouths. Some were looking at each other. Some were already reaching for their phones with the automatic reflex of people who process the world through a screen first. Nobody was on the floor. Amanda went down. Her knees hit the marble, and she was already assessing airway, color, pulse point, chest rise. The training didn't announce itself. It simply ran the way breathing ran underneath everything else, waiting. Katie's face was pale in a specific way that Amanda recognized immediately. Not the pale of shock or fright, the pale of a body making decisions about where to send its remaining resources. She tilted Katie's chin, checked the airway, clear, no breath. She sealed her mouth over Katie's and breathed, controlled, measured. 1 full breath, chest rising. She pulled back, watched, breathed again. The room above her was noise and movement and the particular chaos of people who want to help but don't know how. She filtered all of it out. There was only the rise and fall of Katie's chest and the count in her head. 1, 2. She was preparing for the 3rd when the hands came. They landed on her shoulders, heavy, certain, the grip of someone who had decided before touching her. She felt herself pulled upward and back, and she resisted with her whole body twisting against the hold without breaking her position. "Stop!" Bowling's voice directly above her. "Step back right now." "She's not breathing." Amanda said it flat and clear without turning around. "I need 30 more seconds." You need to step back. 30 seconds! He pulled harder, and this time the grip was two-handed and final. She came up off the floor whether she chose to or not, and the marble was suddenly under her feet instead of her knees, and Bowling was between her and Katie with his shoulders squared like a wall that had decided it was permanent. Amanda looked past him. Katie was on her back, still, chest not moving. The crowd thought it was over. She could feel the room shifting, releasing, the specific exhale of people who believe the emergency has been managed because someone with a radio has arrived. Bowling's presence meant control. Control meant safety. They didn't know that control and safety were not the same thing. She counted. 1 second, 2, 3. Tammy was somewhere to her left, phone raised, recording with the focused attention of someone who understood they were capturing something significant, without understanding anything about what it was. 4. The doors at the far end of the ballroom burst open. EMTs, 2 of them, moving with the efficient speed of people who had done this 1,000 times, wheeling a gurney between them, calling out to the crowd to move back. The room parted. People actually applauded softly, with the relieved instinct of an audience watching a rescue scene resolve correctly. Amanda didn't move. She stood at the edge of the circle and watched the EMTs work, and she saw the moment 3 seconds into their assessment when the lead technician's hand stopped and his head came up and he said something sharp to his partner that the applause covered, but that Amanda could read clearly from the shape of his mouth and the sudden change in the pace of everything that followed. The room was still exhaling. Amanda was not, because she had counted 4 seconds, and she had spent enough time in enough rooms where 4 seconds was the entire difference between a story that ended one way and a story that ended another. The EMTs were good. They were fast. They had everything she didn't, but they had arrived 4 seconds after they should have, and the only person in that ballroom who understood the weight of that number was standing at the edge of the crowd, being held by the elbow by a security guard who had just made the most consequential decision of his career and had absolutely no idea. They let her leave at 11:43. No one asked for a statement. No one offered an explanation. Bowling simply appeared at her elbow again. Different grip this time. Guiding rather than restraining, and walked her through the service corridor and out the same door she had entered through, as if reversing her presence in the building could reverse everything that had happened inside it. The parking lot was cold. The town car was exactly where she had left it. She sat in the driver's seat for a long time without starting the engine. Through the windshield, she could see the glow of the building. Catering staff moving in and out. A second ambulance that had arrived and was now leaving without urgency, which meant something, though she wasn't sure yet what. She thought about Katie's chest under the EMT's hands. She thought about 4 seconds. She thought about the way the room had applauded. She drove home on empty streets and didn't turn on the radio. The apartment was dark when she unlocked the door, which meant Mindy was either asleep or pretending to be. Amanda didn't check. She sat on the edge of her bed with her coat still on and her phone face down on the mattress beside her, and she stayed like that until the coat felt like too much weight and she took it off. Then she turned the phone over. By 1 in the morning, the number was 60,000. She found the clip without searching for it. It had already reached the suggested feed, which meant the algorithm had decided it was significant, which meant it would keep climbing whether she watched it or not. She watched it anyway. 4 seconds, Bowling's hands, her own back, rising, being pulled away. The angle Tammy had chosen, whether deliberately or by accident, was the angle that showed the least context and the most movement. It looked exactly like what it looked like to someone who had not been in that room. Security had to remove her. She read the caption 3 times, not because she didn't understand it, because she was trying to locate the specific place in her chest where the feeling lived, the feeling of being described accurately and completely wrong at the same time. She found it eventually. It sat just below her sternum, heavy and familiar, like something she had swallowed years ago and never fully digested. The comment section was its own country with its own laws. She scrolled for 2 minutes and then stopped because 2 minutes was enough to understand the geography and she didn't need a longer tour. At 1:47, a message arrived from a number she didn't recognize. She read it once, then again. Unauthorized medical interference. She set the phone down on the mattress and looked at the wall, at the frame above the bookshelf facing backward. The way she had positioned it 18 months ago when leaving it forward had stopped feeling like hope and started feeling like accusation. She thought about Romania, about the hospital in Cluj where she had done her residency, third floor, cardiology ward, the way the light came through the east-facing windows in the morning and made everything look briefly possible. She thought about the equivalency exam and the fee and the wait list and the specific bureaucratic cruelty of a system that wasn't designed to exclude people like her, but achieved it anyway, efficiently, without malice, which was somehow worse. She had told Mindy they moved for opportunity. She had told Mindy the driving was temporary. She had told Mindy a lot of careful, true enough things, arranged in an order designed to protect a 17-year-old from the full weight of a life that was heavier than it looked from the outside. She had never told Mindy she was a doctor, not because she was ashamed, because shame wasn't the right word for it, because some losses are too precise to explain to someone who hasn't lived the specific shape of them. Because Mindy had been 14 when they arrived, and 14-year-olds needed stability more than they needed complicated truths, and then 15 had become 16, had become 17, and the window for that particular conversation had kept closing, quietly, 1 year at a time. The door to Mindy's room opened at 2:19. She didn't knock. She stood in the doorway in the oversized shirt she slept in, hair loose, holding her phone loosely at her side with the screen facing out. Amanda could see from across the room that the clip was paused on it. The 4-second mark. Her own back. Mindy didn't say anything. She didn't ask a question. She just looked at her mother with the careful, measuring expression that Amanda recognized as the face Mindy made when she already had a theory and was waiting to see if the evidence would hold. Amanda opened her mouth. The sentence she had prepared, the short one, the safe one, the one that explained the surface without disturbing the depth, dissolved before it reached her lips. Because Mindy was looking at her the way you look at someone when you already know you've been protected from something. And Amanda was tired, not from the night, from the years. She said, "There are some things I should have told you a long time ago." Mindy crossed the room and sat beside her on the bed. She didn't check her phone again. She just waited, with the particular patience of a girl who had already spent years reading a mother she was never quite given the full text of. Amanda looked at the frame on the wall, the back of it, the part nobody was supposed to see. Then she turned it around. Mindy had listened without interrupting. That was the thing Amanda would remember most about that night, not what she said, or the order she said it in, or the way her voice caught twice in places she hadn't expected. She would remember Mindy's stillness, the way her daughter sat beside her on the edge of the bed and simply received everything, the whole buried shape of it without flinching and without looking away. The certificate, Romania, the exam, the fee, the years of careful, protective silence that had cost them both something Amanda was only now beginning to measure accurately. When she finished, Mindy was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached over and took Amanda's hand, not dramatically, just matter-of-factly, the way you hold on to something you've decided belongs to you, and said, "Okay, so what do we do now?" Amanda had not expected that. She had prepared in the back of her mind for anger, for the particular hurt of a teenager who realizes they have been managed rather than trusted. Instead, she got her daughter's hand in a practical question and the specific grace of being loved by someone who had decided the past was less interesting than what came next. She slept 3 hours. She woke before the alarm. The Eckert family's private legal suite was on the 31st floor of a building downtown that Amanda had driven past hundreds of times without ever going inside. The elevator opened into a reception area that was very clean and very quiet, with the particular silence of spaces where important, unpleasant things were decided regularly, and no one raised their voice while deciding them. Dark wood paneling, corner windows, the kind of carpet that absorbed sound on purpose. Beeson was already seated when she arrived. He was a compact man in his late 50s, with the unhurried manner of someone who had never once in his professional life been on the losing side of a room, and his suit was charcoal and precise and cost Amanda estimated approximately what she paid in rent for 6 weeks. He did not stand when she entered. He indicated the chair across from him with a brief gesture, as if she were already slightly late for something. Bowling was to Beeson's left, hands folded on the table, eyes forward. He had the look of a man who had told himself he'd done the right thing so many times in the last 12 hours that he had achieved something close to believing it. Duran sat at the far end of the table, phone face down beside him. Not because he had put it away, Amanda suspected, but because he'd been told to. He examined the window view with the focused attention of a man who had decided he wasn't really in this room. Her immigration attorney, a thin woman named Reyes, who Amanda had found through a community legal clinic 4 years ago and trusted completely, was already seated beside the empty chair. She leaned over the moment Amanda sat down. Her voice was very low and very careful. "They've structured this to move quickly. The settlement is modest but clean. Signed today, the police referral disappears. The incident report gets classified as an internal HR matter. If you don't sign," she paused, "your visa renewal is in March. I need you to understand that this proceeding, if it continues, becomes a public record. Immigration looks at public records." Amanda looked at the document in the center of the table. 12 pages, cream paper, the Eckert family crest embossed at the top of the first page with the quiet confidence of institutions that have never needed to explain themselves. A pen lay beside it, silver, weighted, the kind of pen designed to make the act of signing feel like a conclusion rather than a surrender. She picked it up. The room was very still. Outside the corner windows, the city moved in its ordinary Friday morning way. Traffic, pedestrians, clouds moving across a pale sky, indifferent and continuous, as it had been before last night and would be after today, regardless of what happened in this room. She thought about the certificate, not the back of it, the front, the seal, her name in full in the formal script the university used for degrees it believed mattered. She thought about Mindy's hand on hers in the dark. She thought about a Tuesday morning in a cardiology ward and a patient with 2 fingers at her temple, and the specific arithmetic of 4 seconds and what they cost and who paid and whether the bill was ever actually settled or just transferred. She had been giving pieces of herself away quietly for 3 years. Small pieces, manageable ones. She had told herself it was survival, and it was, and survival was nothing to be ashamed of. But there was a difference between choosing to be small and being required to stay that way forever. She had not understood, until this moment, that she had confused the two. She set the pen down. The sound it made against the mahogany table was very small, but the shift that moved through the room was not. Beeson straightened almost imperceptibly. Bowling's jaw moved. Reyes went still beside her in the way that bodies go still when they are calculating risk at speed. Amanda looked at Beeson directly for the first time since sitting down. "I'd like to know how Katie Eckert is doing." The silence that followed was a different kind from the ones that had come before it. This one had a texture, an uncertainty. Beeson's eyes moved briefly, not to Bowling, not to Duran, but to the phone beside his legal pad, a reflex. Then back to Amanda. He said nothing, and in that nothing, Amanda heard something she hadn't expected to find in this room: hesitation. Beeson did not hesitate. She had read that clearly within 30 seconds of sitting down. He was a man who moved through uncertainty by eliminating it in advance. The hesitation meant something was missing, something he should have had and didn't. She looked at Bowling. His hands were still folded, but his eyes had gone to Beeson with a question in them. She looked at Duran. He had turned from the window, and she understood with a sudden quiet certainty that nobody in this room had spoken to Katie Eckert this morning. Not Beeson, not her father, not Bowling, who had filed a midnight incident report with meticulous detail and not once, apparently, thought to call the woman at the center of it. Katie had been stable since early morning. Amanda knew that. She had called the hospital from the parking lot at midnight and been told by a tired intake nurse who gave her more information than she probably should have that the patient was awake and responsive and expected to be discharged within 24 hours. Awake since morning, stable. And not one person in this 31st floor room with its dark wood and its embossed crest and its weighted pen had heard from her. Beeson's phone lit up on the table beside his legal pad. He glanced down. Something crossed his face, brief, controlled, but visible, and he turned the phone face down with a deliberateness that told Amanda everything she needed to know. Someone had just made contact, and it was not anyone in this room who had initiated it. Nobody spoke for 11 seconds. Amanda counted them the way she counted everything, automatically, precisely, without deciding to. Beeson's phone stayed face down on the table. Bowling's hands remained folded, but the stillness in them had changed quality. It was no longer the stillness of a man who was comfortable. It was the stillness of a man holding himself in place. Duran had turned fully from the window now and was looking at Beeson with an expression that asked a question Beeson was visibly choosing not to answer. Reyes touched Amanda's arm lightly under the table. A warning! Amanda didn't move. Then the door opened. No knock, no assistant appearing first to announce her. The handle simply turned and Katie Eckert walked in, and the room did not know what to do with that. She was in dark trousers and a plain gray top, the clothes of someone who had asked a friend or a nurse to bring something from outside because what she'd arrived in the night before was a gown that belonged to a different version of the evening. She was moving with slight care, her right hand touching the doorframe as she came through it, not leaning, just touching. A quiet negotiation between her body and the space around it. She looked like someone who had been told to rest and had decided with full information that something else was more important. She did not look at Beeson. She did not look at Bowling. She looked at the table, found the empty chair beside Amanda, and sat down in it. The room's geometry shifted completely. Beeson had arranged the seating with the logic of a man who understood that where people sat determined what a meeting meant. He was across from Amanda. Bowling was to his left. The empty chair beside Amanda had been left empty on purpose. A small, deliberate isolation. Katie had simply undone all of it by crossing the room and filling it. She set a tablet on the table and placed her hands flat on either side of it. Then she looked up. "I checked myself out at 7 this morning," she said to no one in particular and everyone at once. "The attending wasn't happy about it. I told him I'd come back this afternoon. I had somewhere to be first." Beeson opened his mouth. Katie looked at him and he closed it. She turned the tablet to face the room and pressed play. The ballroom footage was time-stamped and unedited. A full security camera view from the northeast corner of the room, wide angle, everything visible. It showed the gala exactly as it had happened. It showed Katie near the pillar, her hand at her temple. It showed the moment her knees gave. It showed Amanda moving through the service door before the crowd had fully registered what was happening. A clear, continuous, purposeful motion that looked nothing like confusion and nothing like aggression. It showed Amanda on the floor working, the elapsed seconds ticking in the bottom corner of the frame. It showed Bowling's arrival, his hands, the removal, and it showed the 4 seconds. They were very quiet seconds on camera. The crowd milling, the EMTs not yet through the door, Katie on the floor, chest still. 4 seconds displayed in clean white numerals in the corner of the frame, each one replacing the last with the ordinary patience of a clock that doesn't understand what it is measuring. Nobody in the room spoke while it played. When it finished, Katie pressed play on a second file, audio only. The paramedics' field report, a man's voice, steady and technical, describing the scene on arrival and the patient's status and the actions taken and the estimated timeline of intervention. He used the phrase prior resuscitative effort twice. He used the phrase likely contributory once. Then Katie picked up the tablet and read aloud from the attending physician's written statement, her voice clear and unhurried, in the tone of someone who has rehearsed not because they are nervous, but because they want every word to land exactly where they intend it. Initial intervention prior to EMS arrival was consistent with trained medical practice and is assessed as a contributing factor in patient survival. She set the tablet down. Bowling said nothing. The folded hands were very still now. A different stillness again, the stillness of a man who has run out of positions to hold. Duran's laptop was closed. Beeson had opened the manila folder in front of him at some point during the footage, and now he closed it. and the sound of it was very small and very final. Katie reached across the table and took the NDA by its corner, 12 pages, cream paper, embossed crest, and slid it across the mahogany toward Beeson. "Tear it up." Beeson looked at the document. He looked at Katie. Whatever calculation he ran in those 3 seconds, it reached its conclusion quickly. He took the document in both hands and tore it once, cleanly, down the middle and set the 2 halves on the table in front of him. The weighted pen was still lying where Amanda had set it down. Nobody picked it up. Katie turned to Amanda then, fully, directly, without the managed distance of someone performing acknowledgement. She looked at her the way you look at a person when you have decided to actually see them. And the difference between that and everything else Amanda had experienced in this building over the past 3 years was so stark and so simple that Amanda felt it somewhere behind her sternum, warm and unexpected, like a light being switched on in a room that had been dark for a very long time. "I made some calls this morning before I came here," Katie said. "The Medical Credential Reassessment Board has a 6-month backlog, standard processing." She looked at Beeson with a light, even expression. "Beeson is going to fix that, aren't you, Beeson?" It was not a question. It had the structure of one and none of the uncertainty. Beeson straightened his cuffs. "I'll make some calls this afternoon." "You'll make them this morning," Katie said, "before lunch." Reyes beside Amanda. I had gone very quiet. Not the silence of alarm this time, but the silence of a woman who had walked into a room expecting one outcome and was now recalibrating everything with the focused efficiency of someone very good at her job. Amanda looked at the 2 halves of the NDA on the table, then at the certificate she had been carrying in her mind all morning. Not the back of it this time. The front, her name, the seal, the title that had been true every single day she'd spent waiting outside rooms she should have been inside. She did not cry. She had not cried through any of it. Not the clip, not the text from the unknown number, not Mindy's face in the dark doorway, not the weighted pen in her hand above a document designed to make her disappear quietly. She was not going to cry now in a room with mahogany paneling and corner windows, and in front of a man who had almost succeeded, but her hands, flat on the table, were not entirely steady, and she let them be. The drive home was quiet. She took the long way, not for any practical reason, but because the long way had more sky in it, and she wanted sky. She drove with the window down and the morning air coming in cold and direct, and she did not think about anything in particular, which was its own rare thing. She pulled into the parking lot of her building and turned off the engine. The 4th-floor windows were lit. Through the faint sound of traffic and wind, she could hear, or imagined she could hear, the specific quiet of an apartment where a teenager was waiting for news. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Mindy. One word. Hungry. Amanda looked at it for a moment, then she laughed. A real one. The kind that starts somewhere unexpected and costs something on the way out. The kind she hadn't heard from herself in longer than she wanted to calculate. It moved through her and left something lighter in its place. She sat for one more moment in the parked car, in the ordinary morning, in the life that was still hers and was about to become more fully hers than it had been in 3 years. Then she said it out loud, quietly, to no one, to herself, to the version of herself that had been waiting patiently inside the smaller version all this time. Dr. Amanda, just to remember how it sounded, just to feel the shape of it in her mouth and find it still fit. Perfectly, exactly, as if it had never once belonged to anyone else. She had never stopped being a doctor, she had only stopped saying so. The world had needed a reason to look. And now it had one, and the reason was 4 seconds long and written in the language of a paramedic's field report and the unblinking eye of a security camera that had recorded everything, the whole true story, beginning to end, for anyone willing to watch it all the way through. She picked up her phone, texted Mindy back, "Coming up, tell me what you want." Then she got out of the car and walked toward the building, and the morning was cold and ordinary and entirely, completely hers.